We're live.
Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Good to be back here. We've got a great guest that I'll introduce, Adam. But should we? I don't know. Hi, I'm Erica Fortgang. I'm a recruiter in New York City, and I'm here with Joanne and Jared, who are also design recruiters, also in the New York City, sort of upstate New York region. And today we have Adam Bunke. Is that how I say your last name? Maybe
it's Bunk, though half my family pronounces it the other way. So super not confusing.
I'm sorry.
Make it up. Choose your own.
Adam, Jeez. Anyway, so Adam is a great experience and design leader. He's seemingly spent a lot of his time in the healthcare space and health tech space. I think, starting out in the sort of agency world, advertising, and then moving over to some startups in the, payments, insurance space. I think that's right. And then healthcare in schools, and moving over to Philips, large corporations, telehealth, some physical products maybe, and then most recently in another telehealth mental health startup where he climbed his way to CXO, which is awesome. And yeah, we're really excited to have you here, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
That's great. I think I can beat that. Can I record that and use that in other places?
Just play that.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yep.
Nice.
Cool. I think before we go into it, though, I'd love to, I think we always like to ask, where are people calling in from? And if anyone's been here before, if this is your first time, let us know.
We love that. Yeah. We're all in New York. Obviously, I'm in Manhattan today. I'm at the office in our purpose-built podcast studio that we built in our office here. I don't know what area I'm. Kips Bay, Flatiron, somewhere around that. 28th and Park, my office.
Yeah.
What does it say behind you?
What does it say behind you?
Oh, accelerating bold ideas.
Well, that is very apropos for today's Design Unfiltered.
Yeah. That's a little Bamboo Crowd tagline. Where are you based, Adam, for the most part?
I'm in Tampa, Florida right now.
Oh, nice one. Escaping this cold.
Nice.
Oh, Ryan, he's in Chicago.
Hey, Ryan.
Love
Nice
that.
to see you again. Yeah.
Anna in Atlanta. It's great. Oh, Brooklyn. Right on. What part of Brooklyn? I was just talking to another designer today in Greenpoint. I used to live in Greenpoint until I moved to kind of the Cold Spring area. But yeah, I love Greenpoint. That was my jam.
Greenpoint seems so cool. Like Greenpoint and Bushwick seem like they're still kind of like this sort of like lawless place. Maybe not so much anymore.
Greenpoint's a lot less like that. It's pretty gentrified.
Maybe this is like back in the day, but one of my kind of new friends that I've made up here upstate, she's just like, I used to just pull people off the street and do like drunken podcasts.
Wow.
And then Michael Che
that Bushwick
and like brought Michael Che on and just
wow.
Crazy. Fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Brisbane.
Hey.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Simone, how are you? Good to see you. Great location. No bias.
Were you in Australia, Adam?
Say what?
Oh, I thought you just said I was in Australia. No.
No. I said, what time is it there?
Oh.
What do we got? 1 p.m. No, that's like 3 a.m. there.
Wow.
Commitment.
Let me double check that. I'm doing my fast math. I should know this, but
Is it Friday? It's Thursday?
It'll be the day ahead, yeah. 4 a.m. There you go. All right, early riser.
Thanks for joining from the future.
I know.
Yeah, let us know how design is there, because some days we're not sure here.
Is it still around?
Yeah, they still do it. Red Hook. Nice. Okay.
Love Red Hook.
Very good.
Oh, sweet. By the park. I used to live in Brooklyn Heights.
Oh, pretty.
Right there by the park.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful spot as well.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah.
Oh, we really appreciate all the people tuning in.
Yeah, love this.
Great.
And this is such a great, like, this is, just the format of Design Unfiltered, just for anybody who's new here, is that, you guys just, as we're talking, like we'll be asking Adam some questions and it's kind of spitballing. But as you guys think of questions or any sort of comments you want to add, please put them in the chat. Like this is a very interactive sort of format. Towards the end, like maybe last half an hour, 20 minutes, something like that. It's not really a science, but towards the end, we'll actually take your questions live. So feel free to like put your questions in. Sometimes we'll answer them in the moment. But this is really just kind of like a community building, talk with each other, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah. So it's just
riff on it. We always have things we want to talk about, but our goal is to get designers connected with someone like yourself, Adam, as well. You've got a big career to pull from. You've worked in lots of interesting roles, had probably infinite challenges and whatnot throughout your career. So this is an opportunity for other designers to tap into your learnings and your experiences, and we really want to just provide more of that. So use this forum, use this opportunity to get to ask someone like Adam all sorts of questions.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Figma plugin, or I don't know. I'm just kidding.
I got some feedback from a designer that I'm repping about why he likes Design Unfiltered. He's like, the amount of time it takes to build a relationship with whatever design leader you guys have on, to like get in their brains, figure out like how did they get into design, what keeps them up at night. He's like, that takes years of like investment to accrue that kind of relationship to get to that place. So at Design Unfiltered, like we're just going straight for it and hearing from all these incredible leaders about like how they got into design, like what's important to them. Like it's just like an instantaneous thing. You don't have to invest years and years in that relationship. So it's just like really rich information. So maybe that's a nice segue, Adam, if you want to maybe tell us a little bit about maybe how you got into design, like what was your path into like where you are now? You don't have to give us like the play-by-play with each job, but just how did you enter into design?
Yeah, I found design really early. So I was part of a magnet program in my high school in Daytona Beach, Florida, that focused on communications and multimedia technology. So I was using like very early versions of Photoshop and things like that. And we had a really great teacher who came from a fine art background who really kind of pushed us to try all sorts of things. And he would pull things from SCAD and other programs that had kind of emerging graphic design programs to help us just challenge ourselves. So we were doing corporate identity work and things like that when we were 15 years old.
Cool.
And I was selling fine art and making music and trying to find a way to do that and not starve to death. And it seemed like design was a way to pursue that. At least back then, my definition of design was sort of like, how do you make art and not die? That definition has evolved over the years, but that's really how I found it. And so I was doing merch for bands, and I was doing, like pre-CSS website design, doing frames and hard coding into HTML, and and just gunslinging, all kinds of crazy stuff we were doing because we had the tools and the freedom to just kind of make stuff, like making roller coasters and Lightwave, doing early 3D modeling and animation, and early versions of Premiere back in the days before Macromedia was bought by Adobe. So like using freehand and using Flash and me and a bunch of my peers in high school back in 2000 found design that way. So I was pretty early on turning that into things I could sell and things I could help businesses with and help friends out with, and that just kind of turned into something much more fulfilling.
And how did you parlay that into actual UX and product design? Because I started around the same time. I was like the late 90s .com boom, and it's like people didn't really know what product design was. They didn't really know what UX was really on a grand scale. So people were just like, hey, I kind of know how to do this. I'm going to get into it. How did you find your way into that world?
On accident, kind of, maybe out of outrage. So I was working for, so I was working for a newspaper as an art director for a while. We had a small chain of local newspapers around Florida, and I was doing, working in Cork Express and making ads for newspapers, and really wanted to try and get into the agency world. There weren't a lot of those around, kind of where I was, and so a friend and I formed an agency, and we were building Flash websites, and we were winning local addies and things like that, and There's a lot of website design, and kind of went into my first agency gig where more of that kind of stuff. But then getting like really frustrated with third parties that were charging us insane amounts of money to code up our website designs, and so like got mad on the weekend, taught myself HTML and CSS, started coding our own stuff, and that all kind of evolved into doing more product design work. And I think when I got my first gig running a product design organization, I don't know that people were really widely using terms like user experience design, UX research, product design. So like, I think I'd done a couple of app designs, I'd done a couple of website designs, and now was like the only UX designer for a product organization trying to figure out a deeply complicated space. And so it was a lot of kind of learning really quickly. I'd maybe a year prior kind of become aware of Smashing Magazine and everything they were doing. So I was just absorbing everything to try and evolve my thinking and broaden my definitions into a practice that maybe would be a little less covered in imposter syndrome. Like, this has labels. Obviously, someone knows what this is. I don't know what the hell this is. Let me try and figure it out for myself, and maybe prove that I'm worthy to lead these teams and build these things. But yeah, I came out of hacking together websites and learning enough code to be able to talk with engineers and stop this throwing things over the wall to each other.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think that there's a handful of things that you learned at that time about, you're learning these new definitions, user experience was a bit of a newer thing, that as you're upskilling yourself, are you using some of that in your current methodology and in your week to week sometimes, where you're like, things I learned back then I'm still using today, like it still sticks around? Yeah,
100%. There's things I carry with me always from even the early days. Like, well, I don't know if I'll ever work in an agency again. They taught me so much about how to move quickly with a high degree of quality, and to like try and impress myself, and those are things that I kind of keep with me. And also just the fearlessness to go do random things, crazy things. Then some may be total garbage, and I think going from that early days of thinking about design as how do I make art and not starve to death, to kind of continuing to open that aperture further into design is always more than or at least more than you think. And so it turns into visualized intent, which turns into something else, problem solving, to kind of we're looking at it now, which is our job is to facilitate the connection between an organization and its audience. And letting that broad definition be broad on purpose. Let that kind of invade and partner in ways that maybe I never would have thought about earlier on. So as I've been able to kind of add on and kind of stack and move it, it's kind of gone from like T-shape to W shape. Start kind of figuring out all these different areas where design can have a home, where maybe it's just, design doesn't think about itself as the center of the universe, and we kind of broaden this out, and suddenly we're just the servant organization, And so I took a lot of those things and turned it into how to be a better partner, how to be a better servant, how to be a better advocate. And that continues to serve me today.
And that's so much of what the role becomes as you climb higher and higher in the ladder too, right? Like it's really being the voice of design, creating those connections, creating influence with high-level stakeholders to get things through, right?
Yeah, I would argue the greatest tool in a designer's toolbox is relationship building.
Right.
And I was such a crippled introvert starting in my career, and even now, like so much of this is like survival.
Yeah.
I'll do this because like this is something I want to do and I'm passionate about it, but like, all of my energy will be gone after this because I'm an introvert. And so
thank you.
the nervousness that came with addressing chief officers and pitching enormous businesses and but looking in between the lines of those things and going like, this is all about forging connections. This is all about shared understanding and shaping a perspective and synthesizing things that we're finding. And, those are things that can connect us well beyond things like disciplines and portfolios and silos and degrees and, past employers. It's just finding answers together. And designers have kind of a special ability for making that possible.
I love that. I really love that you brought that up, because I feel like so many designers are introverted, sensitive, thoughtful. And sometimes I think in business, the squeaky wheel can get the grease, or the big ego, or like the big person gets a lot of
Hippo.
attention, right?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, that's a
So
good
Yeah.
one.
what's your advice for maybe some people that are listening that are on the more introverted side and maybe
Yeah.
they are having these same fears? Like, how do I forge those connections? Like, how did you go about kind of getting over that and strengthening that muscle?
And some of that I don't think you ever get over.
Yeah.
Like, there's always a voice in your head that's like, "Oh my God, I'm going to ruin this, and that's it. I'll never work in this town again." You know. So I think some of it was, I feel like I'm much better one-on-one than I am in groups. And so are there ways where I can create that opportunity to have a one-on-one engagement? And also in groups, there's an influence that's created by group mechanics that can drive things to go in directions that maybe they shouldn't.
Mhm.
Other things would be like, if anybody's read the Sprint book by Jake Knapp and, have thought about some of those methodologies where when you're leading group process, and I find myself doing enormous amounts of workshop facilitation nowadays, and it's sort of my happiest place, honestly, is creating safe spaces that protect introverts by kind of bringing everything to an equal footing. Like if you're alone together ideating and then you're building after that, then the loudest voices in the room can't steamroll you and crush you. You've taken away some of that by allowing everything to kind of fall to the same level of, we're all going to do this together silently, maybe with some dope music on for a few minutes, and then together we'll kind of talk these things out, and we'll be democratic, and we'll vote, and so it starts to equally weigh contributions. Something else is just not being afraid to ask for time to do homework. So I don't know about you guys or folks on the call, but like I deeply hate popcorning. So when you're in a room and someone's just like, "Hey, what do you think about this deeply complicated idea?" And you better have an answer right now in this second. And in my head, I'm like, bombs are going off and sirens are blaring, and and so like
danger.
Like, oh my God, I'm gonna say the worst thing because it's the first thing that came to like everyone's gonna be deep in thought. I'm gonna be like, what about candy necklaces? Those seem interesting, So my head goes to, can you create a space to, is it okay for me to put some thought into this first? Because I want to bring a prepared mind to this. Like, can you send me something ahead of time? Can I read some things first? Then I'll come with, a cannon loaded with ideas and ready for discussion. But if you challenge me in the moment and I have no time to be alone with my thoughts, I'm going to feel like I'm not bringing my best game, and I'm going to feel like I'm underrepresenting, maybe not just myself, but my organization. So is it okay to ask for some space to get your head around it first? Is it okay to change the dynamic of the conversation by doing an exercise? And like I hate icebreakers, but I like creative warm-ups. And so like ways to kind of break walls down, like stuff like in a minute, how many things can you make with a brick? Right. Is it a hat? Is it a doorstop? Is it, like things that can kind of like, let's get out of who's a CEO and let's get out of who's got a 30-year career, and none of that matters. Like just be people together. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder off the back of some of that, these are really important skills that a designer should learn. Relationship building, communicating your ideas, everything like that. It's not always how a designer is hired, I think, especially in the earlier stages of hiring designers. And you've been a design leader for many years. You've done hiring. You've probably overseen other people doing the hiring as well. Like, how do you help tease some of that out when it feels like at the moment we are in a world of like the portfolio rules supreme, which doesn't have a lot to do with this relationship building. I think both are critical, but I wonder if there's a way that you've seen a good way to tease that out of someone to know like this is a good hire and this is someone that is good at relationship building, which is a critical skill. Like, how do you tease that out?
Yeah, it's a good question. And like traditional portfolios, I can't stand them, and I try to case studies are the closest thing to value I think going right now, and in that world. Like I would love to just take end result portfolio and just throw them in the garbage, because like design is the journey, right? It's not the end result. And so I try to dig that out of folks, right? Like tell me about the journey. Tell me who you were in this moment. Who are you serving? Who are you working with? Tell me about all the arrows flying at you. Tell me the things you wish you would have launched that you didn't get to, that instead you had to launch this other thing. Like so I'll look at case studies and try and kind of discern what I can out of how they think about solving problems. But I try to go to those places because I kind of don't care where you came from. Like pedigree doesn't mean anything to me. I want to understand how you think about an audience and connecting with that audience. I want to understand how you think about your teammates that are not designers.
Right.
You know, like what are materials that you use to design with beyond pixels and inks and
Yeah.
you know, what are the real input devices that are happening here? And it's kind of fun when I challenge people in interview conversations in those places, because some of the stuff that comes out of that is amazing.
Right.
Like, well, I just want to talk to everybody. You know, I want to meet with a key person from every team. Like, so some of this is like embracing a value of courageously going into the darkness to like find things that other people would be afraid to. Wanting to do research. You know, it doesn't even have to be a deeply skilled researcher, but like wanting to know more and know it from the source so that you can, you know, bring the right things. You know, I look for people that question answers.
Okay.
You know, introduce doubt is a value I like to bring to teams I build. You know, always introduce doubt. You know, like they're going to tell you something, you have no idea where that came from most of the time. So find out. You know, is that somebody's idea they had in the shower this morning? Is that born out of market research? Is that research recent?
How valid is the idea? Yeah.
Yeah. Who was the audience? How did they gather it? Like, get to the bottom of it so you can figure out if it's actually the thing you should solve for. And so the most talented people I've been able to bring into organizations are folks that like, they're almost agnostic to tools. You know, and I had a professor in college that kind of beat it into our heads. Like, you can teach a monkey tools.
Right.
You know, it's the stuff underneath it. You know, why are you doing this? What purpose does this serve? How does this align with objectives that you're, you know, being brought in to point towards?
Yeah.
So the folks that kind of think longitudinally, I find, bring a lot more to those questions. And even if they're specialized, they still have an end-to-end consideration for where that specialty factors into the larger ecosystem, the larger challenge. So I try to look for people that have that kind of expansive thinking. You know, not to knock folks that like cool, but like I just want to make cool stuff. Like, God bless you. Sure. There's a need for that too, you know. But I generally find that like the folks that have broad interests and endless curiosity, they're going to go all kinds of places, and I want to invest in them, and you know, be the wind at their back or get out of their way.
Yeah, it's challenging. I feel like it's tough in the space at the moment for a lot of designers to get in the room to communicate some of that experience as well. There's got to be a way that some of it translates to paper with that case study, like you said, and they can kind of show that thinking, show that storytelling off the back of like that relationship and communication skill. I think storytelling skills are so critical for a designer, and not maybe in your traditional sense, but like, yeah, how do you communicate your ideas? How do you maybe get people on board or help share this vision? You know, I spoke to a prototyper yesterday who worked at a pretty sizable tech company, and his job was just to help bring life to these static ideas to better communicate them internally at the company. You know, it wasn't even, sometimes some of that stuff could go into production code, right? But it was just building and prototyping things that looked more real, with mainly the purpose of just communicating the idea. And I don't know, I had a moment thinking like, that's wild. That's a whole role and salary just to communicate an idea.
That skill is. That's a really valuable thing. Is that a big company? Like, was that like a pretty big,
sizable? Yeah, like the kind of place that you could imagine has you know, it wasn't a startup, but yeah, it was with the purpose of like static screens don't really show our ideas, or you know, we're trying to push things. We're thinking more micro interactions or animation. Like, how do we communicate that stuff? How do we show a North Star vision that isn't a static screen? Because some of the best products out there, they're not based on static screens. Like, yeah, and that ability to communicate an idea, I think, seems so invaluable. Like,
I think it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I guess I was going to volley the question to you, Adam, too, is what are some signals, you know, short, like to Jared's point, once they can get in the room and share these stories, great, but how do they get in the room? How can they show that they have the storytelling ability, or how can they be interesting to you if you're looking for this broad-minded approach?
I mean, there's no one answer, because it's really like, who are you talking to, right? Are you talking to me? Are you talking to a CEO? Are you talking to a COO or a CTO? Or, you know, I think there's so many different ways to tell stories, but you have to know who you're talking to, or it'll fall flat. right? So like in some environments, flat screens or like static screens are fine, or post-it notes and coffee stains are totally fine, and the mess of it is appropriate. In some environments where maybe you have folks who just they can't do anything without tangibility, like the shadow puppets and the hand motions just are not enough to talk about how we're going to arrive. So you need something they can touch and feel and react to in order to get a response. So it kind of depends on who you're talking to, and it means you may fail a lot. So one of the things I've tried is just having a Miro board somewhere that's like, this week I tried this with this audience. And that went down in flames. So we'll never do that one again, but maybe we'll try this one, and so especially with like organizations that maybe are completely unfamiliar with design as a philosophy or as a series of disciplines, can we treat that as a prototype and as an experiment, treat everything as an experiment to kind of find out what is the right resonance for that audience or that individual? With chief officers, a lot of executives, I won't say this about all executives, but a lot of executives are just so incredibly busy that they enter into conversations already going, why is this worth my time? And so, and so it's sort of like, if you can't in the first 5 minutes tell somebody what's the point of this meeting, you've already lost that audience. The phones are up, they're already looking at something else, dead, Yeah. So it takes a lot of being willing to get punched in the face over maybe a method of storytelling that isn't going to jam. It may take a lot of trying to isolate folks one-on-one and figure them out. And then like, it's just different storytelling for different folks to try and make it make sense. It may mean a multifaceted approach. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell it 3 different ways. I'm going to tell you a story of data. I'm going to tell you a story of interaction. I'm going to tell you a story of impact. And then I'm going to show you how these things together get to the value that we're seeking or expose new value that we should pursue. But I think it's always about adapting to what the appetite is, what the readiness is, what the comfort level is. There's just not any one device to do that. I mean, roll in there with confidence, like, you got this. That will help. But yeah, I just saw that. You don't get 5 minutes, you get like one. Yeah.
There you go.
So sometimes like there's,
fair point.
sometimes like if you can do it in one slide, great. It should still be like, why should you care about this? Answer that question. And then if that's enticing enough to them, everything else will be, enrichment of that. Right. Guy Kawasaki forever ago posted about how a 10-slide pitch is like, nothing should ever be more than 10 slides. Like the font on each of those slides should be like 34 point. Yeah. Billboard thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like
Headlines.
Be brilliant, be brief. These folks don't have a lot of time, and no matter how lovable you may be and how brilliant you may be, they don't have a lot of time. You need to show them why this is important for their time immediately.
Yeah.
Like that.
And I think that's also, go ahead.
I had a different question, but if this is on the same topic, you go.
Just a quick little note on that. I think just use that visual that I had when you said be bold, be brief, this big, type in the presentation. Just something that I discovered too for designers that maybe are like design ops people or researchers, maybe like design isn't their number one skill. I often get asked like, what should I have my portfolio look like? What should it be? And just for the people out there that might be listening to this that are of that ilk, I saw a great portfolio of a design ops person where her portfolio is basically just like lots of big type, like the main focus, like the main being brought out, but it was just done in a really visually interesting way. So it was mostly written content, numbers, metrics, content, a story, but it was done in a really visually arresting way, only using type and font and that kind of thing. So I thought that was just a interesting usage and
still
really
worked. Still had the effect. The impact.
Yeah. I mean, again, know your audience, know your expertise, and it's obvious when you care about it, right? And it's obvious when you phone it in. But what I like about how the industry is evolving is that it feels like the proximity to business understanding and business goals and all that is getting smaller. Like just making cool stuff feels like that's yesteryear now, and now it sort of feels like the price for entry is, how is this aligning with goals? How will you be measured? How will you, so seeing case studies start to be more present in portfolios and seeing designers, even very junior designers coming in asking questions like that. Well, what is this company trying to do? How is the design team measured? how will I be measured? Like those are questions no one was asking 20 years ago. And I think it's amazing to hear that now. And so it makes portfolio pieces stop feeling like they're just like, yeah, someone can go find a Photoshop template and plug their stuff into it and it looks rad. And, but like now it's like, who even cares about that? That's a fleeting moment that you caught in pursuit of the next moment. It's really like, what did this do? What impact did this make on the world or on your company or whatever? And that's where I think like design ops folks and researchers and everybody can kind of pull from that same sort of horizontal. Like what cuts across all of that is meaning, and how you articulate meaning.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. I had a quick question. If the story isn't too out there, I guess, is just around like your most recent role, CXO title, Chief Experience Officer. We don't always see that title as common out there. It's always appreciated to see a really high level designer valued in a business. We had a quick chat yesterday, and I think you were saying that wasn't necessarily the title or the position that maybe the company was looking to hire at the time, but through your conversations, I guess you sold some value about what that role would be and how you could do that. Is there a quick story there around? Because this is all about communicating, storytelling, and selling to an extent. You sold the idea of being, a CXO.
Yeah, and I thought, for me, CXO was recognizing a gap and showing the team how this role would fill it.
Yep.
Now, I had a very good makeup of team that understood the value I brought, and so like they were willing to work with me on that, and I had driven in kind of big ways a lot of the change I felt we needed to do, and I think in some ways they kind of felt like I was already doing that job.
Yep.
And CXO it's kind of like a newer chief officer role, but in doing the research to propose this to my leadership, like 90% of companies have a CXO now.
Right.
But they do varied things. So it's kind of hard to put your finger on like, well, this guy's a CXO, and obviously that means he does X, Y, Z, because the CXOs like seem like they do different things depending on a corporation, right?
The designer.
Yeah, right.
What does
so
that mean
like,
anymore?
Me coming from a career design background and having branched into showcasing how, it's kind of like I've always dreamed about, like if design does its job right, you've kind of made designers out of everyone. And so having that impact there where I was able to kind of help operations redesign themselves and help clinicians, create different ways to do things. And like thinking through all of that, it was kind of thinking about how my background would be applied to a larger strategy. And so I put together a 10-slide deck and told a story.
Be brief.
Here's the opportunity space. Here's how I think we can address this with the CXO position. It also meant doing things that were like things that maybe struggled with. I had to federate the design team, which up until that point had been centralized. And most of them were not going to be reporting to me anymore. And so that was kind of tough, right? Because like I had a lot of love for that team. We had been through a lot together. They're amazing folks. And so to not be their direct kind of supervisor anymore, to be going on to bigger things, was difficult. But it also kind of came in time with the organization going through some changes and some scaling that, necessitated a different way of thinking about how we organize. So yeah, I worked with my CEO, I worked with my chief technology officer, my chief operating officer, and kind of bounced this stuff back and forth to kind of talk through, like, we recognize that we have gaps here. We'd like to see improvements in these places. I think that I may be the guy to do that because of what I've been able to do that you've seen over the last several years, and even reaching further back into my past. Might it make sense to have a chief experience officer among the other C-suite that is solely fixated on how our different audiences experience our organization, and then can work with these other teams to help resource experience initiatives alongside what they were doing.
Well, it's great that they were open to receiving the pitch, understood it, and then empowered you to do that role, to have that ownership too. I just find positivity in any time, we really see design valued to that degree. I think it's a great thing, a great signal, a great thing for the industry in many ways. So yeah. And
they were great. They were so supportive. And, it was like, I remember my earlier days there being like, we need to hire service designers. And they're like, totally. And what is that? And it was,
so what do they do?
They had the courage to embrace things that they didn't fully grasp. And I think as a result of that, we were able to get a lot of stuff done without all of like the uphill climb that can come with starting a design team in a company that doesn't know what design is.
Yeah. Many designers face that, don't they? Educating on what design is, and there's your powers of relationship building.
And you wonder why, like, we're always in the middle of some existential crisis, you know, as designers. So it's like, because we have to constantly prove who we are, what we offer, and at the same time we have to reevaluate who we are and what we offer. So it's like this, you know, this wheel.
And I love, that we've covered so much ground already in this conversation, that you went from like, hey, I'm, an artist trying not to starve. I'm making, music, and I'm making marketing materials. And now you're this, C-suite design leader. Is there any advice you would give your former self, or maybe people that are listening today that might be kind of on the climb, or looking to be on the climb up to where you're at? Any sort of advice, or any mistakes that you made that you say, hey, like now I know what to do, or any sort of things that you would say to your former self around that?
It's unfiltered, so
Oh yeah, the road is paved with mistakes, right? I think the biggest piece, it's going to sound like vague and maybe a little like bullshit, but it's just all things change. And you can embrace that and walk into that and be an agent of that, or you can resist that. And I think especially for designers, design leaders, like, embrace change, facilitate change, accept that all things change. Folks that have had to learn agile methodology, maybe you feel that some is like, agile method is oil painting, right? Like, it never dries, and so it's sort of like, it's the pursuit of impermanence, because you're never done. And I think for leaders that so is true, and the way you think about it changes because of the realities of your circumstance. Like, all things change, sure, but like, how can I enforce change when I have no resourcing? Or how can I enforce change when no one understands what design is and they put us in a corner over here, or we're a super siloed and matrixed organization? So I think you can embrace that change by trying to either poke holes in it or run experiments around it, or try to prove that there's more, further and wider and deeper. I think earlier parts of my career, I had a very strong idea about what design was, and it maybe prevented me from thinking about it being more. So when I was like an art director or creative director, like, everything was about worshiping at the altar of the next big idea, and it was about making awesome stuff, and awesome stuff we made, right? But like, then I would start to question, like, what is this really doing for the world? I'm great at selling sandwiches, but like, am I helping people? And then when I stepped into healthcare and other things, like, broadening a perspective to, at least for me, is just like always letting the users win the argument. And so, like, I have a background, the COO has a background, a receptionist has a background, like, sure, but like, what any of us think, does it matter at all in the face of what the user needs and what the audience needs? And so, having the ability to hold the space for that voice to ring through all of that politics and posturing and ego and battle of wills, to kind of normalize it all. So I think that's some of the advice I give, is just like, all things change, and embrace that and be a part of it, and have the courage to accept that things don't have longevity. Things can change. They should change, even if it's uncomfortable. There was a great talk at a service design conference a few years ago about like designing services to die. Yeah. Nothing lasts forever. So let that go, and then, the other thing is just go to the mat for the people you're in service of. What I kind of love about workshop facilitation and how you can take that as a microcosmic example of design and expression is, like, you're kind of getting yourself out of the center to rally different folks around how powerful they can be, and how powerful an idea can be, and how powerful teamwork is. And so just that, like, you're not the center. Put the right thing in the center, put all the gravity around that, and try to be the bridge builder, the facilitator, the connector to better things.
I love that.
Good words.
Yeah. And very metaphysical. Like, nothing is permanent, right? Like, we can sit here and, like, me and Jared and Erica can be like, oh, the business and clients and, job hunting. It's like, it's all just dust in the wind.
Just watching Old School the other day, and
you're watching
they play that. old school. And they played it at the funeral, and so it's been
Oh,
stuck
did
in my
they?
head for
Oh,
like.
I hadn't seen that in a long time. I forgot that. That's awesome.
Classic.
I love
Classic.
that. I love that.
Well, this industry has just continued to evolve too. I mean, you did it as a designer, right? Evolving what you worked on, how you work, what design is to you. I think we're in the midst of maybe another iteration of some of that too. You know, plenty of chatter around all things AI, of course, but how does that evolve the role of the designer, and all things change. So your role as a designer might start to evolve a bit more. And if you love design, how do you sort of grow with that maybe too, and be that modern day designer, certain things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about I think Bob Baxley said this about designing the machine that designs the designs.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Like, again, all things change, but like
Yep.
being in a position to influence the greater things, the greater machine.
Yeah.
Because yeah, AI and other things may chip away at some of the handcrafts, right? It won't do all of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably promoted to do a whole lot more than it ever will.
Yeah.
But if I think about like how Josh Clark is talking about sentient design and stuff like that, right? It's like it's a material like any other material. And so understanding its limits, understanding its value allows you to fold it into your workflow. But like don't fear it. If you start with a place of fear, like you're going to be at arm's length trying to figure out how this works. And so when I look at things like I was even doing this morning before we got on, playing with this kind of Figma to builder to lovable workflow, where it's like, yeah, now more people can be empowered to get ideas to a place where they might get an audience that wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
And that's not to eliminate the craft in product design and interactive design. It's not to eliminate the craft in engineering or that partnership in the stages in between. It's to try and get ideas to a place where you can learn from them sooner. And I think there's something really awesome about that. But I also feel like you can go down the path of you want to perfect that with prompts, you're going to rip your hair out, and like I tried to build something with Lovable the other day just with prompts, and I was like, why is this thing so stupid? And like, why does it like every time I'm like, yeah, no, I said orange. This is not orange. I had a buddy who was trying to have it generate a whole color palette of hexadecimal codes, and it was generating codes that were not hexadecimal. And it's like
it's all flawed.
So, yeah. I mean,
still inconsistency, I think.
Yeah, well, it definitely is, and I think again, introduced doubt, right? Like blind trust in it is not going to get you very far, right? Like someone's going to call you on it, and so I think having it as a bunch of interns, having it as a way to do things that you just never wanted to do in the first place anyway. Like Chrome yesterday was like, "Hey, would you like AI to group your tabs for you?" And I'm like, "Yes, all right." Can you also then fix my hard drive? You know?
Yeah.
Stuff I've just never ever wanted to do. Yeah, I've never wanted to do any of that, and so robots can do that for me, and great. But can it help me synthesize research? Totally. Am I going to let it do that without checking it? No. So yeah, I think seeing it being trusted without any sort of question concerns me and worries me. But understanding it as a material that can aid you in your work. So I talked about sentient design a second ago. Look at how AI and machine learning could allow you to rapidly adapt a user interface to be exactly what a user needs when they need it. And we see a lot of this in healthcare with really complicated tools that clinicians use, like electronic health records, where there's so much noise, that it's really difficult to do the task you're doing because there's also things about billing and there's also things about coding and there's also, but if it was just what you needed when you needed it and the other things were ceded to the background, that's kind of an amazing use of artificial intelligence and machine learning to help you do what you do best and get rid of all this other junk that's causing cognitive load issues and administrative burden. And I think that's pretty applicable in a lot of other industries as well.
Not just health. Big time.
But yeah, it's where's your trust? And then how are you expanding your kind of toolbox?
Yeah, I love that. Should we take some questions from the crowd too? Since
always. There's a few in there from earlier that some lovely people were asking as well. Great audience. But definitely go for it. You always have good questions too, Erica.
I'm able to actually put the question up since I'm not logged in.
Okay.
But Leslie Hampton at 1:21 p.m. said,
there you go.
Adam, this is what you were saying earlier about like creating a safe space in meetings. So she said, I think a lot of what you're explaining in terms of meetings and making a better environment should be applied to interviews and hiring. Do you apply those same methodologies there? on creating a safe space to bring out the best in people.
In the hiring.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
And how do you
I,
do that? This would be
I
a good
like to think, sorry, I like to think that most people engaged in the hiring process are like trying to get you hired. They're not trying to trip you up. So like, if anybody's ever interviewed for like Google, maybe that's, maybe that's the game. I don't know. But like, you know, yes, I try to create a safe space for my interview candidates because I want them to have an authentic understanding of what they might be getting into. I want them to understand who I might be, and am I going to be an asshole and a micromanager, and is that going to be the worst kind of environment, or am I going to be absentee as a leader, or am I going to be someone that is going to challenge you and push you and support you? Like you need to you're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing you. So I do try to create safe spaces. I try to give you space to prepare. I'm never going to hit people with things like design tests and any of that crap that's like, work will never actually be like this. So this has no bearing on what kind of thing you'd be bringing to the organization. So why would I do this? In certain organizations, I've partnered with human resources and talent acquisition to design the entire candidate experience down to if they're walking into a physical space, is there preparatory material they can have while they're waiting that help them get reacquainted with what they're interviewing for, or the sorts of things we may be asking. In the last couple of months, as I've been searching, I've had certain companies that send me prep materials. Hey, you're going to have a bunch of competency interviews, and this is who you're going to talk to, and this is the kind of stuff they're going to ask you about.
Yeah.
Like, I love that expectation setting, and I really believe that you're never doing enough expectation setting, even if you think you're good at it. Like, there's always more you could be doing. Just hold their hand across the street. Like there's just, it's already a scary place. People are already, just interviewing is scary. I don't know these people. I don't know these environments. I don't know necessarily what they're saying behind the scenes or what they're judging me on. Just tell them,
Yeah.
I agree.
If you're going to make somebody do an exercise, bring them in, pay them, have them work on real stuff with the real team. Like, be real about it. Let them know what that is, or have them speak to, here, we're looking for these things. Go from work you've already done and talk to me about how you address these things. So I'm not making you do nonsense or even worse, like stealing your work. I'm having you speak to things you've already done and having you just show me how you can align that to things I'm looking for, so you can show me versions of yourself, but like, give you time to prepare for it. I'm not going to ask for it tomorrow either. So I think just recognizing that this is still humans connecting to humans.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, I need a specific size nail to hang this painting. Like I need, I need more than what I have on this thing. Like, I want to understand who you are and what you bring to this. And it's not just checking boxes for me, it's making us better.
Yeah.
Music to our ears. Oh, I love that. It's great.
Chris has a good point here about interviews are an advertisement for your company. If you do dumb things, it travels. If you do amazing things, it travels too. Over time, it matters. I just had this conversation with a design leader this morning that the design community is strong. I think they really all speak to each other and communicate well. Companies really have to set a pretty good tone early on, especially for designers of all things out there. Any potential employee, of course, but building that rapport and creating the safety or having a great experience. I feel like a designer is really buying into that. And I can't believe how difficult some companies make it on themselves. And I just don't really understand why. But
first impressions are so important, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you had an app and the first time you opened it, you hated it, like you never go back.
Probably,
right? First impressions. So experience has a really high premium, and we have all, I think, through different things that we consume and interact with, like, we've come to have a pretty high standard for what a good experience is.
Yeah.
And why would you want your first impression to be a weird power dynamic or like posturing? I think I'd be willing to bet that some companies make it difficult because they think it makes them seem like they're like the shit. Like, hey, we're so awesome because we have this really weird exclusive hiring process. Like, isn't that shooting yourself in the foot?
Right.
Like, cool. So no one will work for you. You'll be awesome all by yourself somewhere.
It's like being like a big doorman in front of a club that nobody wants to go to.
Thank God you spent all that money on all those barriers. It's crazy to me how much they would get in their own way. Right? Like, you need these folks to help you succeed, right? So why are you making it so difficult?
Well, I think in this market too, Adam, I think this market, it is a very company-driven market. I think that's changing. I think we're seeing some things that are changing now. But
had
You know,
to
2 years ago, it was a very candidate-driven market, right? So companies were bending over backwards to make sure that candidates, especially design candidates, knew that it was a friendly place for design. I think now that it's just a less friendly environment for designers, or just more competitive, however you want to paint it, language is powerful. I think sometimes companies can be extra tough to get into, but it's like, you also have to think about the long tail vision, like how they're acting now. People will remember that when it's time for the candidates to be in charge again in a couple of years, right?
And I think there's a struggle in that place where employers have all the power, because a lot of employers are really short-sighted when how they think about value and strategy. You know, and designers, I think, in our nature is to be long-sighted. You know,
Right.
and so how do we find a balance between those things so that we can convince folks that we can bring it short and long term, but the long term is important and worth investing in.
Yeah.
So you see a lot of stuff that's like, yeah, I need a designer that can just like make a thing for me in a week, and then you like never hear from them again. And it's all transactional and it's all drive-through ordering, and you know they're losing out on what the real value is in having a designer there.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I mean, so all that posturing at some point, I think, will come back and be negative. You know, I'm so glad you feel powerful. However, you know, like, what are you doing with all this like evil pyramid of contemplation? You know, behind like, how can I manipulate a workforce today while I still don't have people to work for me then that are doing the thing I need? You know,
to
it's
your earlier point, change is inevitable, right? Change will go back and forth. Yeah.
And what'll happen when the power swings the other way then? You know, all these employers that are lording it over folks, like what, tail between their legs? You know, like So
it never entirely happens, but I will say, I think even in, you know, this year and last year, and look, there are many great companies hiring great people that have amazing processes, that understand it, that care for their people, that reflect that in both their interview processes, the benefits that they offer, like whatever it might be, it's all there. And I think designers do have choice. You know, you do have a bit of a choice of where you go to work and where you invest your talents and your skills. And I just encourage designers to invest in the places that want to invest in them. And if something doesn't look like an enjoyable experience in terms of the interview, if it looks unnecessary, if it's, you know, undue stress for you, I don't know if that's worth it to go interview at a company, and therefore just give it a miss, you know?
And I think so many of them feel fear. It's like, oh, I need this job. I need this job. But it's like, but I think it's better. But I think, to your point, Jared, I'm so glad you're surfacing that, is that I think it's much better to have a smaller pool of companies that you're going for at any one given time versus going too broad, right? And then if you're meeting companies that maybe aren't giving you the kind of vibe that you want, okay, then put them aside, really focus on the ones where you feel like you're being treated the way that you want to be treated, right? And go whole hog on those, like find people that are connected at those companies, find people that you know that know somebody there, like really try to get the warm intro and the social proof. You know, you might have to actually apply on the apply now link and go to their black hole, but hopefully there's there's other things you can do.
I also wonder about feedback to employers. You know, I don't see this often, but like once in a while on Glassdoor, you'll see an interview candidate left feedback about what the process was like. You know, and I wonder, especially for early stage companies who, like, you know, a lot of folks are just kind of figuring out what they're doing. You know, maybe they need that feedback because they don't know that their hiring process is oppressive or confusing or whatever. You know, and so I don't think that system is as firm as maybe it seems sometimes. They're not always doing this, you know. So
intentionally,
so I think there's maybe an interesting back and forth that can come out of that, which is, you know, I've been in this position a few times where like someone's tried to have me do a study and I've been like, hey, but can I propose something instead of the study?
Yeah, what about this? Or
you know, like I think you guys are great and I'd love to like, you know, have a good shot at this role, but like I won't do this because I don't think this is going to get you what you want, you know. And so the ones who are really interested in like, you know, cool, just like, is there a way that you can prove your abilities? They're not going to dig their heels in on doing a study, you know, or like whatever
take-home task or whatever.
Cool, right? Yeah, but like take-home tests and stuff. If they're going to be firm on that, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about that. Like, I turn them down. Like I will never go forward with a company that asks me to do. You know,
I've got a pretty good strike rate now of either turning them around to find an alternative way to do it, or ultimately I have to decide where I put my efforts too on the recruitment side. But yeah, it's exactly as you said. I think it's about signal. What signal are you looking for from here? And is there an alternative way that we could get that signal that maybe doesn't, you know, go down this path? I know we've only got a few minutes left, so
Yeah, Yeah, I see another question from Kelly Robinson from 120. If somebody wants to put it up. She said, I've recently seen an idea where you should only show 2 options and never any more. Thoughts on how many options you should be presenting?
Interesting. I came from the school of thought of 3.
Okay.
And so like when I'm doing conceptual work, I'll try to present 3 concepts. Now, depending on who the audience is, there's all kinds of manipulation that can be at work. Now, I remember in the agency days, it was like, make the others look a little less good, and the one you want, like, make that one look a little better. And so you're just subtly manipulating your audience. I'm not going to advocate for that, but like, I think I like the rule of 3s. I think 3 is a good number for you trying to like narrow down, but also not get it so minimal that there aren't options. But also depends on the context, right? Conceptual work, you can certainly do that. But if you're like zeroing down on a component in a UI or something, like, you may not have the option to do 3. You may be living in a design system that only has 1 or 2 components, or so like it kind of depends on the context. But yeah, I like 3. That 50-50 split can be difficult and unnerving, especially if you're pitching to I remember being 19 and pitching a brand identity to a hospital and like seeing a completely divided board of directors and being like, now what do we do?
Sweet.
Right. That secret third option that's going to land the plane. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love it. Any last minute ones you want to cover off as well? This has been super fun. I love hearing about all this stuff, jamming on it. You always have some good questions, Erica, too, that maybe you like to fire out around
the end.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Adam. This has been great. I wanted to ask you, we were talking about AI. What are some of the tools, the platforms that you love, that you don't like, that you use every day, or any other like productivity tools? Just what are you
you
using?
love your productivity tools, Erica.
I know,
you're into it.
Cooler.
I guess I'm probably going to be kind of boring with the answer. I'm really digging.
Yeah,
I'm digging Lovable a lot. I think just that sense of being able to, like, hey, I wrote a prompt and now I have a native app. I can go like test. Like that's
pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I haven't got a chance to really play with this yet, but I'm really fascinated by what Miro is doing with AI with their canvas that they announced.
Okay.
Like, I use ChatGPT and have integrated it through Apple Intelligence, and so I kind of play with that a lot. I'm trying to just turn my brain more into being more vocal with my AI experiences and having conversations and seeing how much more natural prompting becomes instead of typing everything.
Interesting.
But
that's a good trick.
I'm using ChatGPT. Occasionally I'll play with Perplexity when I'm looking for cited research. Notion's AI tools are really helpful. And then, most of the time I'm taking ChatGPT and I'm trying to make it do things I'm not sure it will do to see what will happen. Like, I made it. I'll take a popular song and be like, make ukulele tablature for this.
Oh,
and then watch it spit it out in ASCII. And I'm like, I didn't know if it was going to be able to do that.
Wow.
So there's just stuff like that where I'm like, is it a party trick? Am I going somewhere with this? Is it just me being weird and curious all the time? Yeah. So like mostly it's a small number of AI tools. I made my own GPT the other day for workshop methods, and I'm kind of tinkering with stuff like that. Or like we all have books and websites where we go for workshop methodologies. It'd be great if you could just ask an agent, like, I'm trying to generate ideas. What should I do? And then here's a bunch of ideation methods that you can use, and we're kind of tinkering with that stuff.
Okay, bit of play and a bit of professional in there as well. You can do a bit of both. Yeah.
I won't sell it. I'll give it away.
That's the spirit.
That's cool. Everyone has so many different like fun use cases.
Right, like for recipes, it's like, this is what I have in my fridge. Okay, ChatGPT, what can I make?
That's the only way I cook now. I don't even like.
I don't use anything at all. I'm full Luddite. Yeah,
I've seen people using
it on paper. Still,
I've seen people using it for like workout routines and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm this tall. I weigh this much. I want to lose this much in like 6 months. Like, what would you recommend? Like, I've seen people do that, and
that's all right.
But that's like, are you going to trust that blindly, or should you talk to somebody else first before you like?
Should definitely get
a hamstring.
Couple opinions there. I will say it's not very good at math, so you have to definitely check it for sure.
A robot not good at math. That seems very counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It's really bad at math.
Wow.
Really
okay. Well, hey, can't beat a calculator. That's a recruiter's best friend, basically. Now you got to add up all those sweet fees you got.
Oh, yeah.
Love that. This has been a super fun chat. I
a
really
great
appreciate all these insights, and
Yeah.
I love hearing about what makes great designers sometimes outside of the pixels, because I feel like there's a lot going on in that space at the moment. And it's a nice little refresher for me in particular to, go beyond just those as well. Think about great designers that, some of those other soft skills too that make them really great at what they do.
Yeah.
It's a
And also like
reminder.
A/B testing your story, like who is your audience? How
Mhm.
is your story landing? Sometimes I tell people like do an A/B test of different resumes or even different
Yeah.
stories or things like that,
Yeah.
that too.
Awesome. Any last minute things? Otherwise, I'm going to hit end stream and say thanks to everyone, and then I'm going to post this live. Pop this up on our YouTube channel. You can find this on LinkedIn anytime as well. Come back, rewatch. We'll cut out some nice little bits and pieces from here and share that as well. Yeah, lots of golden nuggets in there. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam.
Right on.
Great.
Appreciate it. All right, I'm going to hit the button. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.